Well, I find that for me to get involved with a new idea or a new picture, it has to it seems like it has to suggest a kind of level of impossibility at the outset. There has to be some kind of photographic problem that I have to solve, and there isn't a problem. I set it up for myself. So that's how these pictures have come about. I have this little publication from 1978. It was made by an American artist called Robert Cumming. It's called Equilibrium on the Rotary Disc. And one of the main illustrations in the book is this disc that spins at the crest of a waterfall, and it kind of sits there in perfect balance. If it goes too fast, it will sort of go upstream. If it goes too slow, it will be crossed by the flow of the water. And for years I walked around with the idea of somehow translating into a photograph. The first attempt at this failed. I had photographed the wrong waterfall, the scale was wrong, there was no way it was going to work. That turned out to be a completely different picture. So I gave up on it, and then a year later I sort of started all over again. And I, instead of driving around looking for the right waterfall, I found this website for white water rafting. I went through all the hundreds of waterfalls and I found this location. Fortunately, it was very deep in the woods of Wisconsin, so it was very difficult to get to. Then there was still the wheel was missing. And I built that. I built that. It's about 6-7 foot tall. It's quite big. And in the little publication, there's another illustration which sort of clearly shows the wheel. So I built it as a close match to that. And I built a whole contraption with a pool and a big crank and a sort of a backdrop, and two men could stand behind the crank and pull this wheel around at fast speed, and I could photograph how the flow of the water would actually have been. Obviously I could never transplant this wheel to the waterfall. It would have been very dangerous and impossible. So I wanted to really kind of stay true to some kind of formal elements to the illustration, but completely make my own composition. And in terms of the actual landscapes, it's very different from this illustration. And it's kind of the same way that day for night images looks. Day for night is this technique popularized by Hollywood in the old days, where you photograph a scene during the day, and with sort of adjustment to the exposure time and development time and the kind of filters in front of the camera, you can, under the right condition, turn day into night in the photograph. It has a slightly kind of artificial look, which I like, but you can see that it's not right. You can see that the highlights are too bright, and you can see too much into the shadows, but you very quickly accept it as reality. I imagine myself a little bit like as in the situation of how like a writer would be like when having to write a historical novel. I mean, it's on one hand you can be completely lost in the overwhelming research of details and you sort of doubts about period accuracy but really it's I think at one point it becomes about establishing a kind of balance between invention and fact, really. So these pictures are both kind of like a resurrection of the past, a sort of a period piece, but at the same time they're about today, and they're very much sort of about the contemporary photograph and the contemporary landscape.